So for the benefit of the newcomers, which are quite a few today again, I'll just quickly, we won't do the whole, I'll just do a quick recap of what we did last time with the Bodhicharya Avtara. So one, of course, we did sort of a life sketch of Shanti Deva, very colorful life and so on. We did a little bit of the background of how this translation has come about and how we get the commentary for this text. And then we had an overview of the text, which is basically all about how to generate bodhicitta, how to maintain it, how to intensify it. So most scholars divide it into 3 parts, the 10 chapters. First 3 chapters are about generating bodhicitta. The next 3 are about maintaining it and not regressing, going back. And the next 3 are intensifying the bodhicitta that you already have. And the 10th one is a dedication, which we always do with every Buddhist practice, teaching, and so on. But whatever merit we may have earned from studying this, discussing it, practicing it, we dedicate for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, and then a little introduction about the meaning of the word bodhicitta. The bodhi is wisdom and chitta is mind, or that part of the consciousness of the mind. And often it is translated not just as mind, but as sort of mind-heart. So it's like both sort of intention and feeling of wanting to help others with the wisdom. So again, by saying mind-heart, we are sort of saying like wisdom, compassion, hyphenated. So that is bodhicitta. Now, again, I did just say in passing that there is relative bodhicitta and there is absolute bodhicitta. So absolute bodhicitta is the mind-heart, subtle consciousness that is aspiring to complete enlightenment, but for the benefit of all sentient beings, to take them out of this, to take them towards full enlightenment too. So you, even if you are in a position to enter nirvana, the bodhisattva does not enter nirvana, postpones his nirvana till he has actually taken everybody to Buddhahood. And relative bodhicitta is again divided into 2 parts. There is inspirational or aspirational bodhicitta, and then or bodhicitta in intention, and then there is practical engagement with bodhicitta. And the example I gave was, and there's a common example, you want to go somewhere, that's your intention. So many of you may, I said last time, would want to come to Deer Park, or maybe we can all meet in Goa. That's a intention, but we do nothing about it. It just remains at the level of intention. But if we say, okay, now what is the quarantine rule? How much do the tickets cost? It's better to go by air or this thing. You ring up your friend in Goa. What's the situation there? You are now practically engaging with the intention to go. And once you start doing that, then it is, you are still in relative bodhicitta. You have not reached enlightenment. You have not reached Goa. But you are now taking concrete steps in terms of practice to do this. I'm not going too much into this because some of the verses in the first chapter deal precisely with this aspect of the various bodhicittas. So we did last time only the first 3 verses. There are 36 verses in the first chapter, and that first chapter is entitled The Excellence of Bodhichitta. In the past here, we had discussions on why should we want to be enlightened? Why not just lead a cool life? And I mean, don't do anything unethical, don't harm other people. Do your job, do it well, do it sincerely. Help if you can other people. That's it. Why do we need to think of enlightenment? And same sort of question, what is this whole thing about bodhicitta? Why is it so important? Why do we need to, think of cultivating it and intensifying it and leaving everything behind and so on? Well, because it will lead to enlightenment. But so this chapter is devoted to the various aspects of why bodhicitta is extremely important, especially if you want to get out of this suffering. And of course, we know suffering is where the whole Buddhist teaching starts, with the 4 Noble Truths. Now, last time I said that the commentary that big fat book which I showed you, The Nectar of Manjushri Speech, is not available on Kindle. Well, the last time when I checked, it was not available, nor could I get a free PDF, but now it is available on PDF. And I did buy it today, though it's a little expensive, like $1,700 on Kindle, not a hard copy. In fact, the hard copy is just $600. We are selling it in Deer Park. So, but there are certain advantages in Kindle because the footnotes, you touch the footnote number and you immediately go to the footnote and you come back to the text, which is cumbersome when you have this heavy book in your hand. At the same time, in the book, you can mark better, you can make cross references. You can do that in Kindle, but you have to learn all that. For those of you who can buy, please do buy this. Then there was the question last time of the edition which I am using.
If one has to buy out of these two, which one should one buy? I mean, if one is a beginner.
You're talking of
either the Nectar book or the blue book.
No. First, you must have the text.
Okay.
Because even if you are going for somebody else's teaching, forget me now, you go to somebody else who's doing this teaching, you would go with the text so you can follow. Nobody's going to print the whole book and give you there.
No, now, so which of these
is I would suggest, see, this is the older edition. It's out of print, I think you don't even get it. So you go for the other one. Both are the same. It's just a second edition or a later edition.
Okay. So the Nectar one is not for beginners, right?
Nectar one can be for beginners. It's nothing very difficult to understand. I'm taking everything from there. It's not like complicated. It's not technical. In fact, it is easier to follow than the verses. Because you will see right now when I go into some things of the verse, unless I talk about that, you will just take the verse at a superficial value. You know, I mean, you will take the first verse itself, which we did last time, and you'll see how deep you can go in it, which you understand perfectly well if you read the commentary. It's just that then if you have that book and you're just going to keep it on your shelf, it's not worth buying. If you're going to read it and study it along with the verse, then it makes sense.
The verse is there even in the Nectar, na, Aspi?
Yeah.
The verses are there available even in the Nectar of Manjushri.
No, that is the big distinct. They just put in brackets verse 1 and then 3 pages on verse 1. Which is, I don't know why they do that. Okay, another 150 pages would be added to the book, I suppose, because this book has about that much of the verse. But they could put it in 6 point, very small print, save space, do what they want. But it's very cumbersome not to, any translation would do, not necessarily their own translation. But they have not done that. So, I mean, I was always struggling. And that's why even on Kindle, I mean, you still need the verse. So, okay, one is on Kindle, the other can be in your hand, something like that. So so now I am following the older edition because, as I said, I've got it full of notes, which I have handwritten. But you follow this one, the scan of which I sent for the first chapter. And like last time, if you find that what I am reading and what you are reading from that, there is some word which is different, not an ordinary casual word, but something like last time it says the dharma over here. And the new edition says Dharmakaya. Now, this is a substantial difference, and we need to understand both. And why would the later edition say Dharmakaya? Because it has some extra meaning. So, I'm just requesting you that you all follow the new book. If it's just a paraphrase of what I'm reading, no problem. But if there is some word or some technicality or something which is really different, please point it out. Because I've got both editions, but I have to read from one, and I read the one where I have the outline in front of me. So we start with the first line, which says, homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Now, this is a typical example, Annie, of why you need the commentary. Now, this is completely understood, no? I mean, yeah, homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But there is, as we saw last time, there is a significance to this. That at one point, the king of Tibet, somewhere in the 7th, 8th century, said, well, there are so many commentaries coming out. How do we know where this commentary belongs in the 3 baskets of the Buddha's teachings? So the 3 baskets are the Sutra, the Vinaya, and the Abhidharma. So Sutra, of course, the Sutra teachings. The Vinaya is the code of conduct, ethical behavior for monks, for nuns, for lay women, laymen. And the Abhidharma, which is the sort of metaphysics, the beyond the dharma, where you have all the wisdom concepts and levels of the mind and all the numerical things, like we were saying last time, 4 Noble Truths, 6 Paramitas, 5 Buddha families, 8-fold Noble Path, all these meant 53 or 51 mental factors, and so on. So when a teaching, when a commentary or a treatise is dedicated or pays homage to the Buddha, just the Buddha, which they will say omniscient one or world-honored one, the Buddha, that means it is a teaching from the Vinaya, because the Vinaya, your ethical code of conduct, creates the karmic imprints, creates the karma, and then the fruits of karma. So your entire cycle of living in this samsara and in future rebirths is determined by your actions, thought, speech, and work and body by actions. So that is to the Buddha. If it is Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like here, it means the teaching has to do with the teaching of the Buddha in the sutra. Because most of the sutras, you will see that some Bodhisattva is asking the Buddha a question, or some Bodhisattva is asking another Bodhisattva a question in the presence of the Buddha with his sort of blessing and imprimatur, and somebody is answering that question. And so it goes on in the question-answer form. Like in the Diamond Sutra, the Diamond Cutter Sutra. If there is no self, then are there Bodhisattvas? If Bodhisattvas have to save all sentient beings, but there are no sentient beings because everything has no self of its own. Such questions and such answers all throughout in the sutra. So when the homage is paid to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that means that this treatise is based on the teachings in the sutra. And if it is to Manjushri or some other Bodhisattva of wisdom, then the teachings are from the Abhidharma. That is to say, the wisdom teachings, the mental factors, the analysis, like the whole going just beyond the ethical behavior and the teachings and the worldview. So here, this is homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Also, they classify treatises, all these commentaries, in 4 categories. So the first is where something that is disorganized, some teaching, some concept is disorganized. The person writing the commentary puts it in an organized form. That's the first category. The second category for a commentary or a treatise is to make simple and to explain difficult concepts and difficult ideas. The third category of commentary and treatises to bring scattered ideas together in a systematic form. And the fourth category of teaching or treatise, the commentary on teachings, is for the purpose of practice. So this is the teaching, but how do you practice that? So Bodhicharya Avtara falls within the last 2 categories, bringing a lot of scattered ideas together under the label of Bodhicitta and cultivating that, and for practice, because he gives very clear directions. This has to be practiced, that has to be practiced, and so on. In fact, there are some very detailed instructions, which we may even feel very, like for instance, if somebody asks you, where is so-and-so, where is this restaurant? It is rude, he says, to say, it's there. You should say, it's there. Don't point, do it all your fingers. How to wash hands. This is very important in these days, apparently. How to wash hands, So he gives detailed instructions how to wash hands, which is polite, and in good company, you use that method when you're washing your hands in front of someone. So it is both practice and, of course, at the level of ideas. So now the first 2, 3 are the homage and his reason for writing the treatise. So the first verse says, if you have your thing open somewhere, you can read it off, the scanned version. But I'm reading it in any case. To those who go in bliss, the dharma they have mastered, and to all their heirs, to all who merit veneration, I bow down. The first 2 lines. So those who go in bliss, of course, refers to the enlightened beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The dharma, the teaching. But in your new edition, it's a Dharmakaya. Okay. Dharma they have mastered, and to all their heirs, their successors. All who merit veneration, to all of them I bow down. Now, to go in bliss, the Sanskrit word is sugata. We had a little discussion on that. Su means beautiful, well, good. Um, and Gata means to go. Now, it's a bit like even Tathagata, but Tathagata has a double meaning because some people interpret it as Tat Agata or Tatha Gata. So Agata is to come in Sanskrit and Gata is to go. So thus Tatha, thus one goes or thus one comes is the title for the Buddha. And last time we saw that, this, so Sugata is the one who goes well, one who goes perfectly, and who one doesn't return or look backwards ever. Thus he goes. Dharmakaya is a term taken from the concept of the three bodies of the Buddha. And this takes a little understanding, and it's still difficult to understand and wrap your head around it sometimes. Often, in fact, always, in fact. So the thing is, the earlier scholars, especially in Mahayana, the earlier scholars had this concept that the Buddha has a physical body, that would be Siddhartha, Gautama, etc., a physical body, but he also has something like a mind body. And it is this mind body that emanates and is seen in different places simultaneously, or it is the mind body that does miracles when the Buddha's miracles are recounted. Later, another concept came in, which was that so they used to call the physical body the Nirman Kaya. Nirman means something that is physically available to see. And the mind body was something different, which did all these miraculous things. Later scholars, so then when there were these physical body and mind body, the question would arise from students and even from scholars, when we say, I take refuge or I go for refuge to the Buddha, which Buddha are you going to refuge for? You're going to the physical body, you're going to the mind body, and so on. So they introduced a completely new term called Dharmakaya, which is to say the Dharma body of the Buddha, not the physical, not the mind. And in fact, the later development was, this whole thing was recast in a different way. They said, well, look, the Nirman Kaya is not a physical body. The Nirman Kaya, they describe the way we were discussing the body of the Buddha in the Lotus Sutra. You remember the story of the great physician where he says, it was only a skillful means that I demonstrated when I was born as a prince. Then I saw the suffering sights, and then I went and sat under the tree and became, but I have always been, I was enlightened aeons ago. So they said the Nirman Kaya is not really a physical, it is the body which we ordinary human beings perceive when a Buddha appears in the world. Okay, which is different from saying it's just a name for the physical body. Then they said the Dharmakaya is the Dharma body which embodies, it is like a corpus of all the qualities of the Buddha. The strengths of the Buddha, his compassion, his fortitude, his courage, his wisdom, of course, everything. All the corpus of his physical, mental qualities of body, speech, and mind is the Dharmakaya. So when a person is supposed to have achieved Buddhahood, the expression used was, he or she has obtained the three bodies of the Buddha, which means though you start as a physical body, the level of consciousness of the mind is that in future now, you will come as a Nirman Kaya whenever you wish to come. And you will be seen as a Dharmakaya. And in fact, the Buddha says, in so many words, When they ask him, oh, when the Tathagata goes away passes away, where does he go and so on? And how do we meet him? How do we see him? So he answered, when you see the Dharma, you see the Buddha. When you see the Buddha, you see the Dharma. So that is actually at the core of the Dharmakaya. Plus, the Dharmakaya, again, they say, is like the embodiment of the full realization and the full transmission of the Buddha. That is to say, full realization, all these qualities, etc., etc. And transmission, that these qualities don't remain with him for his own benefit or whatever. It is transmitted fully, completely, perfectly for the benefit of all humanity. So now you see, all this is explained in even simpler terms than I am, because I'm struggling still for some of those words. If you read the commentary, this becomes crystal clear. And of course, the commentary goes into many pages where I'm trying to sum it up. So those who go in bliss, the Dharma, they have mastered, and to all their heirs. So of course, in a manner of speaking, we say, oh, we are all the sons and daughters of the Buddha. But actually, there is a concept there also of the sons of the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So Buddha, Siddhartha, had a son named Rahul, which he got with his wife Yashodhara. This was before he left the palace. So Rahul is considered the son of the heir of the body of the Buddha, which of course he was, like any normal human being, he was born with his father and mother, through his father and mother. Then the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, that is to say the voice hearers, that people like us, and the solitary Buddhas are the sons or the heirs of the speech of the Buddha. Because the Buddha speaks and they hear and they get on the way to enlightenment. And the mind of the Buddha, the Bodhichitta of the Buddha, compassion and wisdom, the sons of the mind of the Buddha are the Bodhisattvas, who strive to understand emptiness, who have the aspiration to free everyone from suffering, and so on. So to all of these, including the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, who merit veneration, I bow down. And according to tradition, I shall now in brief describe the entrance to the Bodhisattva discipline. So this is his introduction to this text. Now he comes to a humble sort of declaration, and he says, what I have to say has all been said before, and I am destitute of learning and of skill with words. I therefore have no thought that this might be of benefit to others. I wrote it only to sustain my understanding. So this is, of course, he's saying, I'm not writing anything new, I'm not saying anything new, but he is the third aspect of the treatise, taking everything that is scattered and putting it in one place in an organized way. And before that, he said the entrance to the Bodhisattva discipline. So he's also going to tell you about practice, which is why this treatise is put in these two categories. Now, this humility is because, for instance, in Tibetan, there is a saying that on the peak, like mountain peak, on the peak of pride, the waters of good quality do not stay very long. If you're trying to cultivate good qualities in yourself, and then you become proud and arrogant about that, it's like trying to collect water on the top of a mountain peak. It's going to flow away. It's going to escape you very soon. So you have to be humble, not on top of the mountain. So he's therefore, he's now being humble. I've done nothing great. I'm just putting all these thoughts together. I don't even know if they will benefit anybody else, but it is for my own habituation and understanding. My faith will thus be strengthened for a little while, that I might grow accustomed to this virtuous way. But others who now chance upon my words may profit also, equal to myself in fortune. This last is important. One is who chance upon my words. So this book is there, it's everywhere, it's on Kindle, it's in every religious library. But how many people chance upon it? Only if we have the merit or the karmic virtue can we chance upon this and have the benefit to study from it. And when he says, therefore, the others may profit also, equal to myself in fortune, he's talking of his good fortune, of course, but not wealth or anything, but those who are equal in merit and equal in karmic fruits to be able to profit from this. Because you could give this book to a close friend and it will just remain, they will never open it perhaps, So you need some motivation, some profit. So now, after paying homage, giving the purpose of his writing and exposing or sort of, talking about this humility in writing, he says, it is so hard, meaning it is so hard to find such ease and wealth, whereby to render meaningful this human birth. If now I fail to turn it to my profit, how could such a chance be mine again? So now we come to one very sort of important aspect, that human birth, if you believe in rebirth, human birth is extremely rare. And you have to be extremely fortunate to be born as a human being. And that is what they mean by ease and wealth. In fact, they say it is so rare that analogy given is that think of a blind turtle who is deep under the water in an ocean and comes to the surface only once in 100 years. And on the surface of the water, there is a yoke. Yoke is like a piece of wood with a hole there where you yoke the cattle. No? So it's a hole in the wood. So the blind turtle comes up to the surface once in 100 years. And the probability of you getting a human birth in your next life is as much as the probability of, by chance, that turtle's head popping through that hole in the yoke, floating somewhere in the ocean. It is that rare, they say, to find human birth. And then, of course, there's another little more complicated comparison, and that's here in the commentary. Again, to show the rarity, the very low probability of you managing this. We should take numerical examples. If we take numerical examples, the quantity of all the beings in the hell realms are as many as the particles of dust upon the surface of the entire earth. Everybody who is in hell now, they are as many as the particles of dust upon the surface of the entire world. Proportionately, the Hungary Ghosts, that's the realm of Hungary Ghosts, pretas, they say in Sanskrit, are like the grains of sand in the river Ganges. So he's going like, all this amount of dust particles on the earth equal all the people in hell. Now in the next realm, they are as many as the sands of the Ganges. In the third realm, which is animals, that means that you are getting rarer and rarer. The pretas are much less than the hell beings. The animals are much less than how much are the animals? Like the grains of, are like the grains in a vat of beer. So whole earth, and now you come down to this thing of beer. The gods and asuras, the semi-gods and asuras are like snowflakes in a blizzard, while the humans are like the motes of dust on one's fingernail. So the number of beings, the chance of your being born in hell or in the Hungry Ghost realm or in the animal realm or even as an asura, the titans, the angry gods or gods, you are just like that much probability you have. Dust that would have collected on your fingernail, which is pretty smooth, is true all the plus, the beer and the Ganges and the dust. So this is the rarity of getting human birth. And of course, what are this thing, ease and wealth that he's talking about? If you feel this is getting too technical, we can speed it up. But I thought these are important issues anyway. So you're saying one is the freedom or the ease is the freedom of not being born in one of the hells as a Hungary Ghost, as an elephant, in the realm of God, among barbarians who are ignorant of the teaching and practices of Buddha Dharma, one with wrong views concerning karma and so forth, in a time and place where a Buddha has not appeared, or mentally and physically handicapped. So it's not just being human, but we have all our faculties with us. If you were blind, if you were deaf, you would have a great handicap trying to get any Dharma teaching. And the intrinsic endowments, that wealth is to be born a human being, to inhabit a central land, that is where the Dharma is proclaimed, like India or wherever, to be in possession of normal faculties, to be one who is not karmically inclined to great negativity, and to have faith in the Dharma. And furthermore, a Buddha has appeared in the universe in which one is living, and at an accessible time, that he has expounded the doctrine, that his doctrine still persists, that it is practiced, that one has been accepted by a spiritual master. That means we all have some teacher at least. So this is all the preconditions, pre-existing conditions needed to even start off and be aspired with some idea like bodhicitta. Any questions you want to, or any feedback you think this is too technical? Or, because I'm also going a little fast because I thought we'll try and finish the chapter today. And I'm only stressing on some key points, which will come up again and again in other teachings for you anywhere you go. Any questions?
I think it's good, Aspi. I mean, this is fine. The level
Sorry?
of detail is good.
You're okay with this?
Yeah,
That's
it's
what you're
good.
saying.
The level of detail, I think, is good for us.
Okay,
For me, at
okay.
least.
Okay, so let's continue for some more time. So now, as we were discussing last time in the introduction, where does this bodhicitta come from? Where does it arise from? Because we are in the midst of suffering, midst of countless distractions, suffering itself, of course, the major distraction. And we know from other teachings and all these scattered ideas that wisdom and compassion both are needed, and both go hand in hand. Both are like, two horses in one carriage, two wings of a bird, and so on. And perfect compassion may not arise till perfect wisdom has arisen, and perfect wisdom may not arise till perfect compassion has arisen. So how do you break this vicious catch-22 cycle? And how does it get broken, in fact? Does it come from outside? Does it come from within? So this is actually from the words of the Buddha himself. As when a flash of lightning rends the night, and in its glare shows all the dark black clouds had hid, likewise rarely, through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts arise, brief and transient, in the world. So, the rarity of a virtuous thought coming in the midst of this defilement, suffering, distractions, afflictions, is just the glimpse you get when in a dark forest you can see nothing. There is a flash of lightning, and for that instant you see something. And that is what Shantideva is saying. You have to persevere with, and make it grow, and never regress. Now, the key words here are likewise rarely, through the Buddha's power. Now, as I said last time, here it seems as if we are talking of an external stimulus. A Buddha, you're obviously not a Buddha, you are full of this distraction and defilement. And it's something like Buddha's grace or Buddha's wisdom coming into your mind or something like that. But probably the more acceptable explanation of this would be that we do all have that Buddha nature within us. Yes, it is covered. It's like a diamond that's covered with mud and defilements. Some people don't even know they have anything like that. You remember that parable of the jewel in the robe, the two friends, the rich fellow ties a jewel in the poor man's robe, the beggar's robe, and the beggar doesn't know about it. And 20 years later, when they meet again, he's as poor, and he says, "What did you do? I gave you that diamond." He says, where is the diamond? He says, "Oh, open that knot in your robe, and there is the diamond." So that jewel that we all have is the Buddha nature. So it's because that is there that in spite of all this, because of some causes and conditions, external, maybe nothing to do with Buddha, but some causes and conditions, that has a chance to send a spark like a lightning through the other levels of your mind, and you get inspired and something arises within you. The external thing could be something like terrible scenes of war, or some person suffering, or even your own loved one suffering in a certain way. So if this is the case, and that Buddha nature also can only just push through with great difficulty in very extraordinary circumstances, then he says, "Behold the utter frailty of goodness," verse 6. "Except for perfect bodhicitta, there is nothing able to withstand the great and overwhelming strength of evil." So you may have the Buddha nature and it's very dormant. It has the potential. It has the potential of making you a Buddha, becoming a Buddha. But it is so frail, and the evil around you is so much, and the suffering around you is so much, that until you consciously, with an aspiration, develop bodhicitta, the mind to enlightenment, which comes with compassion, you are going to, that virtuous thought will just fritter away. There will be nothing left. And he then warns also that many people come to the Dharma with great enthusiasm, but then if they don't persevere, years get lost, they regress, and there's nothing left in hand. All the years that you spend practicing Dharma this, Dharma that, trying to convert people, trying to talk about this religion, that religion, is all wasted. Because you have not persevered and not allowed that thing to lose, to get lost. The mighty Buddhas, pondering for many ages, have seen this, and only this will save the boundless multitudes and bring them easily to supreme joy. So other virtues, you may have some other virtues. I mean, you may be very generous, you may be very clever, but those virtues will also get frittered away. Those virtues will also get distracted in the face of your essential afflictions, mental afflictions. And it's the Buddhas who have taught that this is the way. Developing bodhicitta is a surefire way of maintaining this momentum towards enlightenment. 8, verse 8. Those who wish to overcome the sorrows of their lives and put to flight the pain and sufferings of beings, those who wish to win such great beatitude should never turn their back on bodhicitta. So here again he brings in the idea, not just the sorrow of your own life, but to put to flight the pain and suffering of other beings. So there's nothing much to explain here.
Yes, I told Jana. Oh.
Ria, will you mute your mic?
Siddharth, you can do that as host. Siddhartha, you can do that as host.
Okay, let me see.
I've tried to tell her on the chat to switch off for a long time, but she's still doing it.
Okay, it's muted, no problem. So now he says, should bodhicitta come to birth in one who suffers in the dungeons of samsara, in that instant he is called the Buddha's heir, worshipful alike to gods and men. So, should bodhicitta come to birth, that means should that We'll come to it a little later here in the verse only. Relative bodhicitta, the aspiration to be enlightened, to help others. The moment that takes birth, even if you are like in the worst of hells, in the worst of dungeons in samsara, he says, in that instant, you are called the Buddha's heir. And since now we are talking of a Mahayana text and we are talking of the way of the Bodhisattva, you are the heir. Think of the first verse as the son or daughter of the Buddha's mind here. So you become an heir of the Buddha, worshipful alike to gods and men. And one of the epithets for the Buddha, one of the sort of titles or names of the Buddha, of the original Shakyamuni Buddha, is he is the teacher of gods and men. He's not a god. He's not an ordinary human being. In fact, Sangha says, is one of the Western Buddhists, one of the earlier Western Buddhist monks, is no more now, that in the cycle of evolution, in physical evolution, you have animals and you have human beings. There's a certain distance in consciousness and development and so on. In terms of spiritual development, the distance between human beings and Buddhas is like 100 times, countless times more than the difference between human beings and animals. So the moment you are the heir of the moment you have this aspiration, you become the teacher of gods and men. So that's why we say Buddha is not an ordinary human being, but he is a human being and he started as a human being. But his spiritual evolution is such that he's way beyond ordinary human beings and their level of consciousness. And in that sense, we are closer to the consciousness of animal than we are to the consciousness of the Buddha. And therefore, the moment you become the Buddha's heir, that means, remember last time I said you want to take Bodhisattva's vow, you first take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Some teacher does this for you. Actually, you can do it in visualizing the Buddha or Bodhisattva in front of you. And then the teacher, usually is the preceptor, the teacher, will symbolically cut a lock of your hair and then give you a Buddhist name, or give you a Bodhisattva name, which he would have written down, and he gives you that chit of paper. So you are actually changing your status from a samsaric being to an aspiring Buddha, a Buddha's heir, and you therefore change your name also. So you're in fact leaving behind your previous identity completely. If you are serious about your Bodhisattva vow, because now hundreds of people come for teachings and kneel before the Guru and they cuts his hair and then they go back to their normal life. I mean, when I say normal, you don't have to become a monk, you don't have to renounce everything physically, but the mental attitude is one of renunciation. The mental attitude is one of aspiration to helping others. And now what he's doing is, he's showing the various benefits. No, the chapter is Excellence of Bodhichitta. So he's going to show us why Bodhisattva is excellent by various examples and metaphors and analogy. Then he will talk about the specific benefits you get just by the intention of developing Bodhichitta. Then the specific benefits you get when you actually engage with Bodhichitta. I mean, a practical engagement towards Bodhichitta. Then proving the benefits by scripture, proving these benefits with reasoning. Again, benefits in intention and benefits in action through reasoning, logic. And the greatness of a person with Bodhichitta and so on. And then he finishes this chapter. So let us see. So now in examples, he's giving now metaphors and analogies. For like the supreme substance of the alchemist, it takes the impure form of human flesh and makes of it the priceless body of a Buddha. Such is Bodhicitta. We should grasp it firmly. So he says, the alchemist's precious substance they were searching for centuries was a substance that could change base metals into gold. So he says bodhicitta is like that special substance, and now you have found it. To change your impure flesh, human flesh, to the priceless body of a Buddha. And we should grasp it firmly. His whole thing in this book is never regress. Once you have made a step forward, these are the methods and the mindfulness and generosity and all the paramitas, all the perfections, all the skillful means, so that you never lose that. Then he gives another example. If the perfect leaders of all migrant beings have with boundless wisdom seen its priceless worth, we who wish to leave our nomad wandering should hold well to this precious bodhicitta. Now here the metaphor, of course, perfect leaders is the Buddha of all migrant beings, migration in samsara, rebirth after rebirth, have with boundless wisdom seen its priceless worth. So he says, supposing there are merchants who are led by one expert jeweler, merchant, whatever, and you have gone buying and collecting and mining for precious gems. When your leader has told you that this is the most precious gem, would you believe him or not? So if we believe such leaders about the value of a gem in the material world, we who wish to leave our nomad wandering in samsara, birth after birth, coming with the same karmic imprints, suffering the same birth, sickness, old age and death, we should hold on to this precious bodhicitta, because the person who has said this is the most priceless gem is the Buddha, who compared to any leader, any expert, any master craftsman that you may follow in your profession or as a migrant. Then another example, all other virtues, we saw other virtues, no? Whatever, generosity, energy, patience, these are all virtues. Like the plantain tree, produce their fruit, but then their force is spent. So once the bananas come out and the plantains come out, you only have a hollow shell of leaves, which then decays and dies. I mean, I believe that's how the plantain tree grows and gives its fruit. Alone, the marvelous tree of bodhicitta will bear its fruit and grow unceasingly. So it's only the tree of bodhicitta that doesn't halt. It keeps on giving fruit. Whereas he gives the example of a plantain tree. It has one lifespan where it gives its fruit and that's it. Or another example, as though they pass through perils guarded by a hero, even those weighed down with dreadful wickedness will instantly be freed through having bodhicitta. Who then would not place trust in it? So those who pass through perils guarded by a hero. So if you have a bodyguard and you have to go through a dangerous place, then you go comfortably because you have complete confidence in the bodyguard. And bodhicitta is like that bodyguard. It guards your virtue and you go through all sorts of perils. He's giving one more, just as by the fires at the end of time, great sins are utterly consumed by bodhicitta, thus its benefits are boundless, as the wise and loving Lord explained to Sudana. So now he's coming to the idea of bodhicitta as it was taught in other texts other than his own Bodhicharya Avtara. And what was explained to Sudana is in another sutra. So just a few phrases from there. This is from the Gandhavyoha Sutra. Actually, it's a chapter from what is known as the Avtamsaka Sutra. The Avtamsaka Sutra is a huge, it's over 1500 pages in its English translation and has all these other sutras. It's called the Flower Garland Collection. So, this Sudana is a youthful bodhisattva who goes to Maitreya, who is supposed to be the next Buddha. Now after Shakyamuni, the coming Buddha will be Maitreya. And he goes to him and wants to learn about Bodhisattva practices. And what Maitreya tells him is, you go to Manjushri, who is the Bodhisattva of wisdom. And he comes back after his travels, and then Manjushri asks him, Maitreya asks him, what did you see? What did you learn? So he says in reply that Maitreya told him to look into his palace, that is the future Buddha's palace, the name of which was Essence adorned by the ornaments of Vairochana. Vairochana is yet another Buddha. Sudana went to the palace, and at each of its windows, he saw one of the ways in which the Venerable Maitreya had himself trained in the deeds of the Bodhisattva. So every Buddha who comes as a Dharmakaya into this world has himself done all the practices of the Bodhisattva, including the future Buddha who is in the waiting room, like in a Zoom meeting. He's waiting to come in here if we let him come in. I mean, at the appointed time. So, and this was seeing all the practices of the Bodhisattva, including giving away his head and limbs. So it was that Sudana learned all the Bodhisattva deeds and took them perfectly to heart. And then Maitreya teaches him this, O son of my lineage, Bodhichitta is like a seed from which the qualities of the Buddhas grow. It is like a field in which the goodness of all beings flourishes. It is like the earth which is the foundation of the entire universe. Son of my lineage, there are limitless qualities and benefits of Bodhichitta. And even then, there are more. So now, this is all that was explained. So he's just making a quick reference to that all sorts of sins are wiped out. And this is how he explained to Sudana. Now he comes to this relative and absolute aspect of Bodhichitta. Maybe I should read a little bit more because this is relevant. One second. After this, Sudana's, after he's given this instruction to Sudana, this relates again, going back to that flash of lightning thing. How does relative bodhicitta get engendered on the basis of prompting? You see the Buddha's power, we said, and so on, and Buddha nature within you. So Maitreya said, these are the five. The power of a friend. One is the power of a friend. Two, the power of the cause. Three, the power of the root. Fourth, the power of listening to the teachings. And five, virtuous practice. The power of meeting a spiritual friend is, various stories are there, you know. So some good friend, what they call Kalyana Mitra, would talk about this to you, or you will observe the friend and learn by example. That's the power of meeting a friend. The power of the cause refers to the awakening within oneself of this whole path, the Mahayana path. The power of the root is the birth of compassion. So it's not one factor. It's something from outside, a friend, something that arises within you, then the birth of compassion. The power of listening refers to all the profound teachings. And finally, the virtuous practices, all the parameters you practice, refers to the accumulation of merit. So this is how the first aspiration and intention and this arise. Bodhicitta, the awakening mind, verse 15, in brief is said to have two aspects. First, aspiring bodhicitta in intention. Then active bodhicitta, practical engagement. Wishing to depart and setting out upon the road, this is how the difference is conceived. What I was giving that example of going to Goa. The wise and learned thus should understand this difference which is ordered and progressive. So there is an order in this. You have the intention, then you do practically engage, then you go on the path, then you have all these 4 powers, and then you go ahead. So it is ordered, it is progressive. However, both are required. It's not that, like someone asked a question, no? I think Annie, it was you. You said, why do we need, what if we don't have compassion? No, I think Siddhartha asked, what if we only have wisdom? You know, you understand emptiness and shunyata and everything completely. The entire theoretical base and wisdom you have. But you say, no, but you also have, the teacher says, no, you have to have perfect compassion. Why? So, because intention in bodhicitta is that you want to be enlightened to save all sentient beings. Now, do you abandon this intention simply because now you are practically engaging? So if your aspiration is to go to Goa, once you have booked your tickets and once you have packed your luggage and called the taxi to go to the airport, and while you're doing all that, have you lost the intention? You don't lose the intention. Your intention is still there, no? You're doing all this because you want to go to Goa. So relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta do go together. You don't lose one simply because you say, oh, it's ordered and progressive. You don't lose the intention. You still want to be a Buddha to help other sentient beings. But you know that in order to do that, which is the intention to reach absolute bodhicitta, to get the bodhicitta, which is fully enlightened mind with the intention of helping others. Whereas what you are doing in practical active engagement are practicing all these paramita, the skillful means. So here when we talk also of relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta, you are on the same plane as skillful means and wisdom, or method and wisdom. Wisdom dictates that you have the intention to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. That intention is always there till you attain Buddhahood, and I suppose even beyond that, because after attaining Buddhahood, you're not likely to then lose your intention to help others, because your whole practice has been to help others to reach a Buddhahood. So medium and the message are the same here. So again, it's like two sides of a coin. So when it comes to wisdom and compassion, we understand that. When it comes to relative bodhicitta, absolute bodhicitta, somewhere we get a bit lost. Many people get a bit lost. So it's like, again, like two wings of a bird. You cannot say, I will first develop all the wisdom in the world. I'll become completely at the level of wisdom of the Buddha's consciousness. Then I will start practicing compassion. It doesn't work that way. Nor can you say the other way. Let me just be generous. Let me just exhibit compassion. I will develop the perfection of compassion completely. Then I will start meditating about emptiness. It doesn't work that way. So, and again, there was a discussion in the scholars in the past, in those hundreds of years ago. When we say bodhicitta mind, chitta is mind, enlightened mind, bodhicitta. Is it the entire mind? Or is it a mental factor like all the other mental factors, which you get in the Abhidharma? And there were two schools of thought. Some said this is the main mind. You're talking of the main mind, which is the bodhicitta, which is the enlightened mind, within which there are all these further factors. And some said, no, mind is mind. Bodhicitta is one, nonetheless, very important factor. And it was a teacher called Langchampa who unified these two sides of the controversy and said, no. Here again, he said, it's like intention, aspirational and absolute. Unless the whole mind is bodhicitta, there cannot be mental factors will not arise. There has to be a mind for mental factors to arise. And unless there is a mental factor like bodhicitta, you cannot talk in terms of a bodhicitta mind. So more or less that controversy was seen as a definitive sort of instruction. Now verse number 17. We'll go up to verse 20. Bodhicitta in intention bears rich fruit for those still wandering in samsara. And yet, a ceaseless stream of merit does not flow from it. So, you may say, I have the intention, I am doing bodhicitta in intention. I will be enlightened, I want to be enlightened. Yet, a ceaseless stream of merit does not flow from it. So, if this will not, just having the intention to go to Buddhahood will not take you to Buddhahood in simple terms. Just the intention of going to Goa will not take you to Goa. You have to engage practically. Then some merit will flow. Then you will get the benefits of travel and going to Goa and having Feni over there or whatever you want to do. So all those benefits will come if you engage actively. For when, with irreversible intent, the mind embraces bodhicitta, willing to set free the endless multitudes of beings, at that instant, from that moment on, there's a comma, it's not a full point, from that moment on, a great and unremitting stream, a strength of wholesome merit, even during sleep and inattention, rises equally to the vastness of the sky. So, even in sleep, you get the benefits of bodhicitta in action. So I will stop here. I thought 20, but this is the concluding of this section, where he has given now the sort of excellence of specific benefits in intention and specific benefits in action. The reason I'm stopping is I do think this is getting a bit heavy, and I'm sure you have some questions. And if you don't, let's think. You remember last time we decided that we would keep Tuesdays for Shantideva and Fridays any topic, any discussion which people may want to have, which is lighter in. So we can have.
You said you were reading verse 20, but I seem to have something else on verse 20. Did you?
No, so I did not read word. That's why I said we'll stop at 19. I also thought that this whole section will finish on 20.
Okay.
This section is not, this section finished on 19. 20 is a different thing, as you say. Because he's saying here, the comment, I mean, this section 20 is about proving the benefits of bodhicitta by scripture. So in the sutra which Subhu requested, there are certain stories and ideas. So these come from scripture. So that is another section. So we'll take it later. Any other question?
So I have a question. I have two questions actually. One is specifically on 19 and 18. When they say, I'm looking at the PDF. So there, the words I've noticed are a bit different from the words you're reading in most of the words. So he's saying, for when with irreversible intent, the mind embraces bodhicitta. Now this is what, is this when you are in active bodhicitta mode or not? This is not the intention, right? Because willing to set the, or is it that just by having this intention of becoming someone who would want to end the suffering of being?
No, here he means, so he says with irreversible intent, the mind embraces bodhicitta. He's talking of mind embracing active engagement in bodhicitta. Because just before that, he has said, just bodhicitta in intention will not give you any ceaseless merit. And now he's going to say, as I said, there's a comma at the end of this, that even in sleep you will get merit. So here, irreversible intent is the ordinary use of the word intent, not bodhicitta in intention. He means just the actual human intent to do all these things, to be practically engaged, to also have the aspiration to be a Buddha, to then also, he says, willing to set free the endless multitudes of beings and so on. So when this whole thing of relative and absolute in intention and in practice you embrace, then at that instant, from that moment on, then you get a sleeveless. I mean, here if it will completely contradict the previous 17, because he said that there will not be any merit if you just do in intention. So here we should not get confused with, here in my book it is in italics, bodhicitta in intention is in italics, which means like it's one complete phrase by itself. And in 18 with irreversible intent,
Hmm.
How is it here? How is
No, it's
17 reading in that book?
same thing. From Bodhichitta and intention is in italics. Yeah.
But then
I
he
was
said,
just, yeah.
but this will rise alone from active bodhicitta. So when he said the mind embraces, he means mind should embrace active bodhicitta along with the
Okay.
intention of saving endless multitudes of beings. And what was your second question?
My second question is that in this specific text also, and also going back to some of the things you spoke about in the last session, is this idea of gods and demons and hell realm and all of that, which in my mind, if you I mean, I read like What Makes You Not a Buddhist, and also the some of the texts you said, and also when you started the class, is that Buddha didn't believe in the idea of a god. He said that you have, like, there is no god. It's like everything is causes and conditions, and whatever arises is a consequence of that. So then why there's so much emphasis on like gods and evil and demon? Because in that sense, for me it's like kind of using the same sort of, you can say,
No,
rationale as other.
no, it's a very valid question, and there is a very valid answer also.
Okay.
So Buddhism, see, there are two interpretations of the six realms. What are the six realms on which you're supposed to be taking birth in the round of samsara? Hell beings. First, we just name the realms. Okay, then we will give the two interpretations. One is hell beings. I mean, hell and the beings there. There are hot hells and there are cold hells, and these are like very, very sometimes disturbing images. To give just one example, there is a hell of the red lotus. It's a cold hell, the cold hell of the red lotus. What is that? It is a hell which is so cold that you bend over to protect yourself from the cold, and your back splits open and your red flesh comes out like a lotus. This is the image. So like this, you have hell. Then you have Hungary Ghosts. They are picturized as beings with huge stomachs, a long neck, like some of the flasks you see in a chemical laboratory, and then a long beak. And they're always given food in very flat plates. So okay, they are always hungry and they can never be satisfied. Third is animals. Fourth is human beings. Fifth is asuras, or angry gods and demons. And the sixth is the realm of gods. Now this is gods with a small g, not a capital G. So in the traditional understanding in Buddhism, there are the six realms in which you are like nomads, as it says. Your karma, your karmic imprint, you're born here, you're born there. Now, some Buddhists believe that these are actually existing realms. That means to say, now they say, look, human beings do we know? We have seen human beings. Animals do we know? We have seen animals. So now, if these two realms exist, what is your objection to other realms at different levels of consciousness? So one is that, okay, if these things physically exist and you actually physically take rebirth. But now people are tending to believe that we can have a psychological interpretation. So you could have like Dante's Inferno, where all the description of the different levels of hell. Or you could have Jean-Paul Sartre's interpretation, where he says, hell is other people. This is an existentialist sort of. Now, very often, the psychological explanation is something like this. So what is common to both is your thought, speech, and actions are karma, are the karmic actions that you take, which determine your forthcoming experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, hell-like, animal-like, and so on. So they say that, in fact, you are taking rebirth every instant. So if now, while we are talking, if I get a phone call that somebody whom I love very much has died, I will be plunged into hell. And then somebody else rings up and say, April Fool. Okay, I'll be very upset, but I'll be back in heaven. And so on. So we get like 2 letters in the post. And one is an electricity bill you can make out. Say, oh my God, now this is going to screw me. There goes my plan for vacation. I can't do because I know this electricity company is going to overcharge. Everybody has been overcharged. Then you open that envelope and you find, okay, it's not that much. Actually, it was quite a cold winter. I had the heater on most of the time. It sounds reasonable. Then you see the next envelope. It is from the income tax department. Now you say, oh my God, what hell is this now? What new hell I have come to? You open the envelope. It's a refund check. They've refunded 20,000 rupees to you. Now you see from one state to another, from hell to heaven to human to whatever, you are just, and even while you're doing this, your dogs come and scratch you because it's time for breakfast. So your Bodhisattva world comes into play and you decide to feed the dogs before you have breakfast. So these realms could be actually realms within our mind, but we move from one to the other depending on our thought, speech, and action. So you could be plunged into hell. I mean, so hell is right here, people say, no? Or as Shakespeare said, no? There is no heaven or hell, but thinking makes it so. So that is another interpretation of rebirth and karma. What Buddhism definitely affirms is there is no creator God, capital C, capital G. That this thing moves. I know there will be a lot of objections to this. In fact, I had a chance to discuss this with His Holiness Dalai Lama when he had come to 2007, I'm talking of, long ago. There is no creator God. So you say, well, how does this existence come? From moment to moment, how do you go? So you say, well, causes and conditions, what you just said, no? Causes and conditions, including the mind. So the next moment of consciousness arises from the present moment of consciousness. And everything that is within that present moment of consciousness are the causes and conditions for the next moment of consciousness. So what is before that? The previous moment. What is before that? Previous moment. So is there a first cause? One first set of causes and conditions which started this whole chain of causation? You say, no. There's no first cause. There is no first cause because there will have to be a previous cause and condition for anything to arise, to maintain, and then to, because of impermanence, finish off. Okay, now we say, Buddhism says there's an endless chain of causation, correct? Now, the God religions, theistic, so says, okay, how did all this thing happen and how it is sustained? There will be 2 viewpoints. One will say, well, a God created everything, but there is also, of course, we know causes and conditions. So he sort of puts into motion the law of cause and conditions, and then that takes over. He created gravity, but every time a ball comes from the 10th floor to the ground floor, he doesn't have to intervene because that law will follow its own course. So then you say, okay, then people challenge, how do you know there is God? We have not experienced, and so on. Then you say, okay, look at your watch. It's such a complicated instrument. Every watch requires a watchmaker. So how complicated is the universe and human beings and their bodies? Surely there has to be a creator for that. The watch doesn't create itself. So then we say, oh, but you see, what can be more complex and complicated than God? So who created God? God is much more complicated than a watch. Now you can go on endlessly. And then the answer to who created God is always, he is always there. He has always been there. He has no beginning and no end, correct? These are the 2 positions, right? So this question I put to His Holiness. I said, finally, however much you may use logic to establish cause and condition, or however much you use logic to establish the existence of God, Finally, you are left between a choice of two axioms. Like in geometry, you have axioms. Parallel lines meet at infinity. Now, if you are left with two choices, the choice between two hypotheses or the assumption, in one, you are positing and hypothesizing an endless chain of causation. But you have no explanation how that chain of causation comes into existence.
And in that, sorry,
One
I'm
second.
just
Or you have to accept that there is a uncreated, endless or beginningless God. Either a beginningless cause and condition, chain of causation, or a beginningless God. So it's your choice which one you want to take. There is no finality. There is no way you can prove the existence of a beginningless God with our human intelligence and logic. Nor can you prove, even with our limited distinct, an endless or beginningless chain of causation that just starts somewhere. It doesn't start, it is beginningless. So he laughed. He said, yes, you are right. You have to accept one or the other. Then I said, well, there's another mathematical principle that one would like to accept a system in which the number of assumptions are least. You see, if to prove something, I need 10 assumptions, and then I have a hypothesis. And in another system, I have just one assumption and I have a hypothesis. The mathematical logical principle is take the one with lesser assumptions. So I said, in that case, the chain of causation is only one assumption. It is beginningless. Whereas the creator God has two assumptions. First, that there is a chain of causation which God created. And second assumption is that God is beginningless. So I said, therefore, maybe I am choosing causation. But that's just half a joke, it's not very serious logic. So now, your main confusion, so there's a difference between gods and G with capital G, God with a capital G. Because the one which Buddhism denies is a creator. The one which Buddhism doesn't deny that there are planes of existence, actual or metaphorical.
Mhm.
So there can be ghosts, there can be spirits, there can be all sorts of things. If human beings are at a certain level of consciousness and we are and then of course there is this whole thing of, string theory and dimensions beyond 4 dimensions and so.
Exactly.
So, I mean, a creature who is completely 2-dimensional will have no consciousness of a 3rd dimension and would deny that human beings exist. But we can pick up that creature and put it from here to there and he'll say, oh, I've done space travel or time travel.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Aspi, I think Nafisa had a question also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm seeking clarity. Aspi, you mentioned about the rare chance of being born into a human form. At the same time, you talked about karma, which in a way either you move into a regression or a progression. Now, how does that,
Yeah, correct. How does it reconcile?
Yeah. How does it?
This is not settled. You're absolutely right. Different Buddhist sects, different Buddhist tradition have different answers. For instance, one tradition will definitely say, look, now you are born as a human being, no? You will not regress unless you do such karma, such horrible karma. Like, what is a horrible karma where you could be born as an animal? You kill somebody like Shakyamuni Buddha or you injure him. Now, that doesn't happen every day. I mean, it's not likely to happen. So they say, well, you murder somebody. Yes, that is very unskillful, negative karma. You'll be born in very difficult circumstances, but you'll still be born as a human being. So they don't take this sort of thing immediately from one lifetime. Now you did this, so you'll be born as an animal. They don't see it very mechanistically, But when they talk about the rarity of taking a human life, they are not just talking about immediate previous life, this life, next life. They're talking, so that then again, your consciousness is a beginningless consciousness. So you're talking, even if it is not, again, there may be a dispute on that, whether it's beginningless or it did have a beginning, because everything comes from causes and conditions. But definitely, you would have had millions of lifetimes. Now, in those millions of lifetimes, the opportunity to be born as a human may be statistically very low, like this tortoise. But that doesn't mean that, but after millions of lifetimes, you achieved human being state, then there are traditions that say, no, now it's very difficult to regress. You already evolved so much. And then, of course, you will ask also, how do animals evolve then? How will an animal ever get a human life? Because they can't read, they can't do scriptures, they can't sit and meditate. So then there are again various answers for that, like, well, but you do see that some animals are starving and diseased on the road, and some get, beauty parlors treatment. You can go to a dog's beauty parlor. So obviously his karma must have been a little better than that dog's karma. And then the other thing is, what now if Annie is practicing whatever meditation, chanting, something, her dogs are hearing that all the time. Could that affect? No, they're serious, this thing. That's the good fortune that the dog is born in a family where Dharma is practiced. Then maybe that dog might go into, because he cannot practice. He cannot practice. He can only see others practicing or hear those sounds. So maybe some imprints are left, and those imprints push him a little forward, and maybe he will be born as a racehorse instead of a kachar, like.
And his German Shepherd is lucky.
I don't know. I'm going to, from next time, I'm going to put it on the on the speaker.
Yeah.
So far, I've been putting on the earphone because she's always sitting around.
So all I'm saying is your question is very valid, but the answer is Creator God is a worldview. I mean, it's a view of ultimate reality. How things come into existence, remain and die out.
Because there is also one view that all of this, when you read not like religious texts, but if you read like mathematical texts like Stephen Hawking and all of that, some of them, like one of the views, as far as I understand, is why should there be a cause for something to be there? Why can't we just accept as human beings that the universe is there because that's just it? I mean, there's no necessity to have a cause or a reason for our existence.
I think you're asking two questions. One is, why should there be a cause for something? But that we see even in ordinary life, no?
Yeah, that I agree.
Okay.
But
the other question is, why should there be anything at all?
Anything at all, but why can't the answer
void
to
and
that?
Nothing existing? Why did all this drama have to take place at all? Isn't that what you're asking?
No, what I'm saying is the answer to that question of, which is the whole reason for theoretical physics in some way, is that why is there a universe? Then they go into what the universe. But the answer to that could also simply be, it just is. This is the way it is, and it's there just because it is there.
But that doesn't satisfy most human minds, no?
I agree.
The whole discipline of philosophy came with those questions. So just to say it is, because then you are saying that the universe is just as it is. But if I have to have this book, then somebody has to manufacture it. Somebody has to write it, somebody has to edit it, somebody has to compose it. So when a simple thing like a book cannot be, it is there, why look into how it came there? Then you are saying, but the whole universe is that we don't need to. Why should we question that?
But then the book and the universe are not compatible.
Can it not just be into existence?
But then existence and creation, like existence of the universe is not a comparative. You can't make the same analogy as you can make to a book, which is a creation of the human mind.
I'm saying precisely that you can't make the same analogy. So what I'm saying is, if again that watchmaker and the watch thing, if a thing like a watch requires a watchmaker, how can a complex thing like a universe, which has watches in it and many more things, and nature, forget our man-created equipment, the beauty of a tree, the beauty of childbirth, a woman giving birth to a child. How do you, you can't just say it just is, you can say it, but then it will not satisfy your human urge to get answers.
Aspi,
yeah.
I was now and then, while you were reading the verses, thinking of Amitabha Buddha and Amida Buddha or Amitabha Buddha. And in that tradition of Buddhism, it says human beings are intrinsically foolish.
Right.
And I began to, the thought occurred to me that on our own, can we really attain Bodhichitta? Or is it just a few exceptional people like, the Shakyamuni Buddha? I just, I couldn't help because in the Amitabha Buddhist tradition, without grace, you cannot get anywhere.
True.
And Amit, you have to, at some level, ask for Amitabha Buddha's grace to get anywhere.
I'll come to that, but just before that, we were talking of the three bodies of the Buddha. I never came to the third body. We got distracted because that's not relevant here. So we said Nirmankaya is how a Buddha comes in and presents himself to us. It's not really a physical body like the Lotus Sutra story. He's there and he comes again and again, and he's always enlightened when he comes. He only does that skillful means drama of taking birth and so on. Okay. So that is Nirmankaya. Then you have Dharmakaya, which is that embodiment of virtues and qualities and the realization of that and the transmission of that. Now, where will Amitabha Buddha fit in? Amitabha Buddha, so with the doctrine of the three bodies came the understanding of multiple universes in Buddhism. And multiple universes or lands were called Buddha fields. So for our universe, okay, you don't want to say universe, Gallic, but definitely our universe, which they used to call world, our Saha, world of suffering, Shakyamuni was the Buddha. Now the land to the west of this land, they say is the pure field of Amitabha. And that is Sukhavati, that Buddha field is called Sukhavati, and the Buddha of that is Amitabha. Now, these Buddhas, so Amitabha is not an emanation of Shakyamuni. He's another Buddha from somewhere. Now, what they say is that just as a Buddha comes with a physical human type of form, which is Nirmankaya, and just as he has a completely abstract sort of almost non-tangible, not pointable Dharmakaya, there is something called the body of the Sambhokaya, which is to say, they call it the reward body. So it's an emanation of a Buddha mind. So Buddha, definitely, Amitabha is a Buddha. But the form he presents himself, or the form, he presents himself for those who are also Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, so they can see him. But the way we imagine he presents himself is called the Sambhokaya. And that Buddha, that emanation, that body of Sambhokaya will have those 32 major marks and 80 minor marks and all that we read about, even about Shakyamuni. Long ears and hands longer going below the knees. Ushnisha. Now, Ushnisha, you see the picture of the Buddha. That's not a top hair knot. It's not a knot of hair. His skull has got a bone formation called Ushnisha. The hair goes around that. So these major marks, which are like fantastical. You don't see a human being like that ever. And they say that to see that form of the Buddha, you have to yourself be almost at that same level, or maybe just a notch below. So Amitabha Buddha would be seen as a Sambhokaya form of a Buddha, of Buddha Amitabha, where we have not yet seen his Nirmankaya. He has not appeared in the world like Shakyamuni Buddha did. And of course, he would also have realized full Buddhahood. And so he would have the Dharmakaya form also. So now the point is, yes, so I understand. So there is this other power school and there is the self-power school. So most of traditional Buddhism is self-power. You meditate, you study, you practice the five and all that. And then you go higher and higher in levels of consciousness. Dash Bhumi, 10 Bhumis on which you travel. Last 10th one is a Buddhahood. Now, the other power is exactly what you said. We are foolish people. We need that grace. Now, even there, you are asked to do something. You are asked to chant that Buddha's name. You are certainly asked to be ethical in behavior. You can't keep chanting a Buddha's name and then, murder and kill and rape. So obviously karma doesn't sort of negate. You don't negate karma just by saying, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha. You don't do that. So obviously there are certain efforts from your side, but what they believe is that that effort will not be fruitful unless you also have that Buddha's grace. So it's a school of thought, and when we say grace or blessing of a Buddha, Just think of it in our normal human world. People believe in the blessing of their mother and father. In some communities, no marriage will take place unless mother and father give blessing. Then go a little higher. Think of Dr. Ambedkar. They call him Bodhisattva Ambedkar. The Ambedkarites call him Bodhisattva Ambedkar. His imprint on our society, on our being, is still there so many years after his death, right? So that blessing of a ordinary human being with all his faults and weaknesses, and he was of course also a political guy and statesman and formed a political party and everything. Now think of Buddha. After 580 years, what is the imprint that Buddha has left on us? We are still arguing, we are still debating, we are still learning, and you have enlightened beings amongst us, not enlightened at his level, but certainly you see actual proof in terms of so many Buddhist teachers around us. Starting with Dalai Lama, think of the 16th Karmapa, and so on. So, when you put all this together, that's what we mean as blessings of the Buddha. So, even though it is sort of, I would say, a little arrogant, and so say, oh, I will get enlightened totally on my own strength. You're right, it may not be actually happening that way. We may have convinced ourselves with our dualistic mind that yes, this is what the Buddha taught and this is what I'm going to do. If it was so easy, we would have many more Buddhas, I think, amongst us. But obviously it's not so easy. And there is something like blessing of people who, and so it's not like you're not praying to him in the sense of, asking for forgiveness, asking for, goods and material goods or mental goods, whatever. But there is something like a blessing.
We also take refuge, right? So
yes, so
the very act of taking refuge
is also
that we
is also like
as a
you're
power.
right. And again, when we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, especially Buddha and Dharma, it also is emphasizing what we don't take refuge in. You see, when I accept Buddha as my teacher and his teachings as the teachings I will follow, then I'm giving up a lot of worldly refuges. I'm not talking of spiritual refuge. I'm not talking of, I won't take Jesus as refuge. No, I'm not talking that. We give up a lot of worldly refuge, which comes from like I said at one point, I think, my uncle is in the police. Kuch bhi karne do na, let the police come, take me to any police station, I'll show them. He's the commissioner or he's the DIG. And so on, My brother-in-law is MP. So and so with this, So we take refuge. Or how much money does he have, Or like Stalin asked when Churchill tried to say something about the support of the Pope towards the end of the Second World War. And then Stalin said, yeah, and how many battalions does the Pope have? You see, we take refuge in certain worldly things. So when you take refuge in Buddha, you're discarding those things. Especially since his teaching, his Dharma says you discard those. Those are not real refuges. You cannot take refuge in a thing which in itself is a reason out of causes and conditions and is prone to impermanence.
These are the worldly concerns you're talking about.
Yeah. No, we take refuge. We take refuge in our level of education. We take refuge in money that we may have. We take refuge in the connections we may have.
So in other words, we can't overlook grace.
No, I don't think so. Except whether you want to call it grace or you want to call it a blessing or an imprint which that person has left on your consciousness. Because we are all interconnected also. I'm just saying if a person like Ambedkar can leave such a magnificent imprint or such a huge imprint on millions of people, and then there are others who don't leave any imprint, no? What imprint has Morarji Desai left on India? I'm not being political. I'm just saying, everybody doesn't leave an imprint. It's only some people who leave that imprint.
I was going to say, Aspi, that Morarji Desai left urine as an imprint.
It's okay. Everything is made from the 5 elements, you see. Everything is made from the 5 elements, dhatus. So now, like, like they say, no, they made a brandy out of Napoleon. They made a herring out of Bismarck. And Hitler will end up as a piece of cheese. That's what was the joke when Hitler was alive. And so they don't leave, even Hitler has not left any positive imprint. People remember the atrocities and the Holocaust and everything, but what imprint has he left? He's left reverse, in fact. Germany has become much more human than it ever was. It's the only country which took all these migrants in without saying we will handle it, we can do it. And they did it. So I agree. I mean, I'm not going to completely deny this part. And because then also, what about this? No, I'm saying, okay, Buddha nature, in that flash of lightning, through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts may arise. So even if it is Buddha nature, that the Buddha's Buddha nature is also there, no? So, and if we are all connected, we are not all one, but we are all interconnected. If we were all one, we would all be enlightened today, because we would be one in mind. Once the Buddha's mind got enlightened, it would be our mind. We would be all one in mind, but we are not one in mind. And we are not one in body either. But we are all definitely interconnected, body and mind. So there has to be some influence, no? If parents can influence children, cannot Buddha with his sort of powers, consciousness, influence humanity?
Aspi, I have one question.
Huh.
I have a question on Dharmakaya.
Huh.
I mean, Nirmankaya, for example, you have a location for that, time and space.
Yeah.
Sakya Punya Buddha. But Dharmakaya there's no time and space. So I have always thought about it, and I mean, today I learned differently, but that Dharmakaya is something which is present everywhere. So, yeah, I mean, that's the statement.
Present everywhere.
I mean, Dharma is everywhere. In that sense, the Dharma body is, everything is Buddha. Everything is made up of Buddha nature.
No, everything has Buddha nature.
So
I mean,
okay, put it the other way around, it permeates everything. Dharmakaya permeates everything.
I'm not sure. I will send you, see, what I put in so briefly, what the doctrine of the 3 Buddhas, I have a write-up.
Okay.
I will send you that. I can send everybody. That is
please do that.
Just 1 page.
Yeah.
It's just 1 page. Because, see, for instance, I had the same question. I was also under the same impression.
Okay.
When I first came to this understanding. Because even in Nichiren Buddhism, a lot of Nichiren writing talk about the 3 Buddhas, the 3 bodies. And so, the whole thing is to attain the 3 bodies of the Buddha. So I always used to think, oh, Dharmakaya is like that universal consciousness, and and then what is wrong if you call that universal Dharmakaya as God?
Yeah.
I used to go ahead, I mean, logically you will go ahead there, no? Then I asked Lakdor, Geshe Lakdor, no? You know him from the Tibetan library.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's not like one entity or one level or something. Every Buddha acquires a Dharmakaya body.
Oh.
But just as your Buddha nature and my Buddha nature have the same attributes. Both are Vajra-like, diamond-like, both are pure, only defilements which cover it, and so on. Both have the potential to reach Buddhahood. So in that sense, I say, we should respect each other because we all have Buddha nature. So again, there at that level, they all have the Dharmakaya, the Buddha body. Kaya only means body. So they all have the Dharma body, the full realization and transmission of the teachings. And then he said, look, will you say that all cows are one? All cows are one. So obviously no. But he says, doesn't every cow have cowness? Every cow has cowness. You won't mistake a dogness for cowness. So he says, but the cows are physically very different. So then I asked him a specific, I said, supposing there is a person who is very jovial and humorous, and then there is a person who is very grumpy for no reason at all. I mean, at least he looks grumpy, all his face is grumpy, and both reach Buddhahood. So will you have a jovial and happy Buddha and joking Buddha, and then the other fellow will become a grumpy Buddha? He said more or less like that. He said more or less like that, you know. Now, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think we'll have to wait till we get enlightened to answer some of these questions. Yeah, because
then it seems a bit like an aura or something, you know. But it's
all
not
can
that.
attribute. Because aura also maybe some people can see. Aura would be something you'll see in the Sambhokaya.
Ah, okay.
So aura is like a river. I mean, that aura, you know. That's why, you know, when those who could see that form of the Buddha would immediately fall at his feet, would be immediately converted and become a student. Those who saw him as an ordinary human being had to listen to his teachings, though the Buddha could read their minds, you know. So why is it, for instance, when somebody approaches the Buddha and the Buddha only says, everything is impermanent. And then the Sutra says, at that point, the man fell at his feet and he was totally enlightened. He had an arahant when the Buddha. Now, I have said this so many times on so many Zoom meetings. None of you get enlightened. I keep on saying everything is impermanent. Nobody gets enlightened. Why? Because when the Buddha said to that man, everything is impermanent, the Buddha knew exactly what to say to that man, when to say it, in what tone to say it, and directly inject that thought into his mind, which is what I cannot do. So that's what I mean, you know. So maybe what you're saying, aura and that halo and everything, that is all Sambhokaya, all the different marks. But Dharmakaya, see, if we say magnetic field, a magnet has a magnetic field. You only sort of, it's a concept which comes when you put iron filings. Otherwise, there's nothing. And we call that the magnetic. So maybe the Dharmakaya is like a magnetic field around the Buddha. We don't know. But I had this concept myself. I thought that it's a sort of merging. So yeah, so that's how I started with Lakdola. I said, so when a person becomes a Buddha, does his then Dharmakaya merge with all the Dharmakayas of all the other? I use the word merge. He said, no, no merging. You are interconnected even before you are a Buddha. You will be interconnected even after you are a Buddha. And what you Buddhahood is like calmness. All Buddhas have that quality of having the realization of Dharma and all the attributes and qualities of the Buddha and the full transmission, the ability to transmit that.